Now, as you can see, there are some really small pieces here. So these, and I think these parts are separate as well, which I don't want to fracture. There's no point, you know, we're not going to see, they're not probably not going to bend, and you're not going to see them bending. So we're going to isolate them and put them by themselves. And to select all the smaller pieces, if we use the measure stop, and then it's something I use quite often. It's quite handy, so you know, it can give you different ways of measuring your geometry. And we want to measure per piece, and the attribute, yeah, we can leave it as class, I think, and we can measure the area. That's fine. Okay, so you can see now on your primitives we should have let's see this area attribute. So you can see it goes from 6.4 to 0.0006, blah blah blah. Okay, for this, so the really small pieces. So now we can use this to split, to separate our pieces, right? And because I'm doing it with this class attribute, each piece will have one value. Not if you don't do it, if you do it per element, it will be per polygon, right? Or primitive. So we're going to do it like this. I'm going to drop a split. Whoops. For that also, I'm just going to delete all those. We got all these weird groups, right? Just to tidy up a little bit. Group delete, and just get rid of all of them. Okay, so it's a bit cleaner now. And then in the split, we're gonna separate it based on the area. Okay, so excuse me. Up here, I can just put, if the area is less than 0.1, split. Okay, so then I get all the small pieces to one side and the bigger pieces to the other side. I'll just call it, say, small bits like that. Okay, I'm going to get an assemble here, and oops, connect it to this side. So these are my small pieces, and these, yeah, as I said, I'm not going to fracture any of these. Okay, we don't need to do that. It's just, you know, extra work for the solver and for you to do, which is unnecessary. So let's assemble them, get them ready for simulation. So we'll give it a name. Okay, this will give it, so the same as what we did here, except I deleted that attribute right after because of this part where, you know, I actually want to use this attribute, which is quite important, the name attribute for simulation. And by default, it just gives you this piece, which calls it piece, right? Which if we have duplicates, and if we, well, we will have constraints. If you have two different pieces with the same name attributes, then the constraints will get confused, and you know, you'll have weird stuff going on. So it's always a good idea to give the attribute a proper name. So I'm just going to call this small metal. Okay, now we get this small metal 32 and so forth, right? So that's good there. Let's call it name. I'm going to drop an attribute promote. I like to have the name attribute on both my, so by default it's set onto your primitives here. You can see it there, but not on the points. But some, well, before simulating, we definitely need it on the points. But before that, I think there are some setting up constraints and stuff. You might need it on the points beforehand. So from primitive to point, select the name. Okay, so that will move my attribute from the primitives to the points. However, I don't want to delete the original, so I want it on my points and on my primitives. Okay, on both. So that's great. Also just drop a group there and call this small metal. Small metal there. Okay, and then we can use an RBD pack I'm only using this, it's not necessary here, okay? RBD pack is a way to just pack together the geometry, the constraint geometry, and your proxy geometry. Now obviously here we don't have any constraint or proxy geometry, but just because I'm going to be using this for the other processes, it's just cleaner and neater to use one anyway. Okay, so basically I just connect that up there, and I'm just generating proxy geometry, which is the same as my you know, high resolution geometry, but it's just to have something there basically. And we could just leave the constraint blank. Okay, and then just drop a null and call this out small metal. Let's just put a gap in there so it's more easier to read. Okay, and then next we'll look at the big pieces.